Hello.
Oh. Hello, so I have a question for Bill. I'm interested to know why those specific pathogens were used in the salmon retail raw survey, knowing that E. coli isn't generally as abundant in fish in the aquatic environments as it is in meats. So I'm wondering if perhaps FSA might intend to look at more fish or aquatic specific pathogens that could potentially transfer resistance genes to perhaps E. coli or other pathogens in the future.
Possibly, yeah. I'll report that back to Central colleagues. But yeah, I'm sure that will be captured from the feedback from that survey. But yeah, good to know for the future moving forward.
I also have a question to Bill, and it's on the. So you showed several, pathogens, and you showed how AMR evolved in them. So what kind of methods or tools do you use to detect them, and what about its sensitivity and selectivity?
Well, basically they are ISO accredited standardized methods that need to be used, and they're outlined in the EU guidelines. So AFB do the testing for us using validated ISO methods and selective broths of media. But you want to?
Can I come in there? The FSA, as far as I'm concerned, most of the methodology is contracted out, so you do have to follow the methodology. It is usually very appropriate.
Yeah, and UCAS and INAB accredited in AFB's case as well. So.
I have a question for Ron. So I'm an economist, and so I don't quite understand very much, data and graphs. But so apologies if my question is a bit off. But so you showed that the treatments that you carry out lowers the level of E. coli towards the end of the process, making the chicken safer. So, however, E. coli doesn't completely disappear, and therefore, I suppose we as consumers, we are told to cook well the chicken. And so I'm wondering, isn't there a way to reduce costs and just avoid all the treatment that you do in the processing, and tell consumers to cook it very well to make sure that there is no E. coli and save money and make chicken cheaper for consumers?
I see where you're going, but that's not the way the industry works, I'm afraid. And there is also a risk, not entirely substantiated, that people acquire organisms from handling the birds. So, if the domestic servant is handling the chicken, they might, in rare events, acquire the organism. So it wouldn't be very ethical, I don't think, to send out birds that are absolutely covered in a pathogen.
Hi, thank you both for your talk. I have a short question for both of you. Firstly, Bill, to you. You mentioned the FSA only sample raw meat and not processed meats. What's the thought behind that? And do you think maybe something might be missing there? Might there be some AMR in the processed meats?
Well, it's because the mandatory EU legislation is for raw retail meat. So it has to be that, and as I mentioned, unprocessed, so no burgers, sausages, and it can be sliced or diced with skin on or off, and you can have chops, but it has to be raw. So it's in the legislation, and that's part of the mandatory EU reporting.
Can I add there? There's a variety of calls from the FSA that aren't actually part of the mandatory surveillance, and they pick up all sorts of so you might find that they're looking for something, Listeria monocytogenes, in something that you'd never dreamed of. So they come up from time to time.
Yeah. And that was just a kind of snapshot of what me and my team would do on a day-to-day basis. It wasn't really, an overview of the FSA. It was just for our science and surveillance team.
And those questions might come from a scientist somewhere and say, oh, what about this? Or we've read a report. So all those meetings are open. You can influence the activities.
Okay, thank you. And Ron, for you, you showed on a slide the reduction in bacterial load on the chickens as they went through the processing plant. Where did the bacteria go? Were they just washed away? Were they inactivated? Did they then go into the effluent of the plant? No.
I have not a clue. No idea on that.
Thank you for your honesty.
I presume they're just washed away in the steam and the runoff. Have you ever been into an abattoir?
No, I walked through.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of messy, and and so you do find that the workers there are taking big precautions not to get contaminated, and you need to dress up, get through the disinfectant, and so on.
Just to add to the end of that one, they go into the wastewater, so everything that comes from an abattoir goes into the wastewater system. I don't know whether the abattoirs have their own method of treating the wastewater before it then goes to a general wastewater treatment plant. But yeah, maybe something to look into now that you've raised that question. I know I'm interested.
Yeah, that is interesting, and I know of several, and there is a large company at the moment being accused of running water into the Wye River, and they're very concerned.
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that hit the news. Yeah,
last couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah. Bangor University are looking at abattoirs now, and they are sampling the wastewater from there. So maybe we'll get some data soon as well.
Hi, I have a question for Bill. First, I'm assuming you don't look at fungi at all, right? No.
No.
Is it on anyone's radar at all?
Again, keep an eye on that for future projects that the FSA might, but again, sorry to sound like a broken record, but it's not in the regs, for the EU mandatory reporting for retail meats at the minute.
So you're a microbiologist, and we all here, and looking at that talk, like you do a yearly, so one year you do one food product, the next year you do, things happen so fast in microbiology, like how is that appropriate? Like how is that acceptable? And these 2 times of the year then too where you sample, it just seems like...
Sorry, it's 600 samples spread out over the calendar year, 50 per month.
Okay, right.
And it's 300 of 2 meat types each year. So at the minute it's pork and beef, and next year it flips back to chicken and turkey, so it's every 2 years.
And we do know that things get into our food system. So where is the gap? Well, what happens? Like, is it relying on E. coli, which is problematic by itself, that we're missing things, or how do we end up with things in our food system?
Again, from my point of view, that it is mandatory surveillance, and it is still important to compare that since 2015. But yeah. Not really sure how to specifically answer that, if I'm honest, but I can see where you're coming from with the fungi thing, but that might be an area of interest in the future in the regs.
But even like a horizontal gene transfer, the plasmids have specific hosts, right? And so E. coli won't capture all of that, and this seems to be not a conclusive way to make our food safe. Sorry.
I have a question also for you, for Bill. So you mentioned that there is this publication in May every year, right? And I'm wondering the impact that this publication may have on consumers' confidence in the industry, because if you publish the data in May and maybe it reports data from July, the previous year, that data isn't very useful for consumers. And consumers might feel, oh, there is this information that comes on the news because the publication has just come out, and consumers' confidence drops, and that badly affects the industry. So I'm wondering how useful is releasing the data that way, rather than keeping continuously informed consumers about the current status of the industry.
Again, we are kind of, the EU reporting is due before the end of May each year. It's, for the previous calendar years, AMR from E. coli at the moment. And then we, as you said, the timings for that of our FSA report are after our EU return. So at the moment, we only release that after the EU return, as you said. So yeah, and it's obviously anonymized as well. The product details aren't included. So yeah, again, maybe something to bear in mind moving forward, but at the moment our policy is to release the FSA report after the EU return has been completed.
I think the danger is that the media monitor these reports and then often just pick up one item and that's on the front of the Sun the next day.
Yeah, exactly. So it can just cause confusion among consumers and badly affect industry in a way that is not fair, I think.
We work in AFB and we do all the testing for FSA. And yeah, we run it from a full calendar year for the particular surveys that Bill was talking about. But we do quarterly updates to FSA. We bring any res alerts to FSA's attention as soon as we discover them. And once the res alert is risen, then you'll often see FSA release. I don't know the proper callbacks, or they do release them as soon as possible. And I know people were asking about why just the retail meat. As a lab, we do the legislative work, but we're always looking out for research work and FSA, and it's not necessarily through FSA NI, but FSA UK will put out calls. We did a raw pet food one. We just finished a head of lettuce one, and they do try to, if they notice anything that has been of interest or alert, they will run a quick short study, a 6-month study. They put the call out, and the research labs will all try to bid and be involved and share them right across the UK. We will work with Scottish labs that may have got the full funding, and we'll do the MIC for them. So there is a lot more to the FSA than just the legislative work. They are working in the background trying to do research and keep on top of topical interests.
I think the argument would be, why doesn't the FSA do most of the work itself? But I think it needs or desires to have independence there, which people in the room are independent scientists.
I think in the interest of time, we will have to end our questions there, but if we could thank our speakers once again.